Welcome to another episode of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver, and so nice to see a couple of you already popping in. Hi, John and Tara, and so nice to have you. If for those of you who are just starting to tune in, please say hi in the chat box so we can say hi back. I am Arielle Silver. I am here in Los Angeles, and for today's episode 43 of Tomes and Tunes, I have another Angelino on the show, John Zipperer, and we are going to talk about books and play some songs. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to bring John in right now. Hello.
Hey, Ariel, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. It's already been a joy sound checking, so that's if you can have fun sound checking, we're going to have a great time.
I know. It's just like gab, 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 gab. I think we covered pirates and...
and not the pirates from Penzance, actually.
Yeah, right. And I don't know. I don't even know what we talked about, but it felt like a whirlwind of like just story after story.
Well, we talked about everything. This has been so fun. Have a nice day.
Bye, everybody. That's it. See you next week.
Nice.
Okay, so John, one thing I don't know about you, well, there are a lot of things I don't know about you, but one of the things I don't know about you... Are you a native Angelino, or where are you from?
No, I'm not. As a matter of fact, when you said a fellow Angelino, I went, huh?
Yeah, I'm not either, but like we're here, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I've been here for a long time. I've been here since '85.
Okay.
I came out here from, I really came from Jacksonville, Florida.
That's right. I didn't know that you were a Floridian. Me too.
Where? Silver Springs. Please tell me it's Silver Springs. No. We owned Silver Springs. It was the thing.
I am originally from Fort Myers, and I lived in Tallahassee, and then Stuart, if you've ever heard of Stuart.
I've heard of Stuart, but I don't know precisely where it is. Is
Actually,
it near,
I didn't even live
Perry?
in Stuart. Near Perry? Where is all that?
Perry's kind of between Jacksonville and Tallahassee.
Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with the state of Florida, it's a friggin' big place. There's a lot of space between everything. No, Stuart is down...
It's not as big as it is empty.
That's right. That's right. But you know what? It's filled with amazing plant and animal life.
Oh, that's my thing about Florida.
Yeah.
You know, I was born there, and then we moved up to Connecticut, and then we moved back to Florida and then Atlanta. So my dad, he worked for General Electric Company, and he moved us around. But my favorite thing about Florida, and the thing I miss about it the most, is there was life everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you turned over a rock, something would go, hi!
For better or worse.
Yeah. Look at it. I'm so excited. My friend John Mollenhauer's here. He's from Nashville.
Hello, John from Nashville. Thanks for tuning in.
John does a great show every Sunday at 10 o'clock called Live with John M.
It's well named.
Yeah, and my friend Tara Sitzer, who sings with me, is here. And Peter Krantz. You know Peter Krantz?
I do know Peter.
Oh, my
Hi,
God.
y'all.
This is great.
Hi, everybody.
Marlon Block, one of our great volunteers and board members from Far West. And Brad Elias, who I haven't seen in a while, a great songwriter. This is so cool. Steve Brogdon. Hello, Steve. And Karen Sullivan, one of my... Karen Sullivan writes my set lists, and I didn't really check with her on what I'm playing today. This may go very badly.
Oh, Karen, you can put it in the chat box, but you know. So I also did that Florida up north, back down.
Oh, you did?
Thing.
Where'd you go up north?
We went to so I was born in Fort Myers. We moved to Tallahassee. I was there for first grade, and then my dad got a job at the World Trade Center in New York. So we moved to first Queens and then New Jersey.
Oh my! Now that's a change.
And then eventually back down to Florida, where that was when I ended up. I wasn't even in Stuart, but if you have heard of Stuart, maybe you've heard of Palm City, and you've not heard of Stuart.
I have heard of Palm City. Yeah.
Whoa. It's
Yeah, well, I
very small.
I grew up there, basically.
Okay.
I mean, I went to high school there.
Yeah.
We played basketball against Palatka Briarwood. We It's funny. We were I went to this little. Well, guys, people were getting stabbed at the high school I would have gone to. So my dad put my brother and I in private schools, and I went to seventh grade was a private school, and it was like a world I'd never been in. But the school was so small. If you played football, you played both offense and defense, and we played these schools that were out in the country. Like we played like Yulee and Callahan, these places where these big farm boys would just crush us. It was
So
like,
you played football. You were not. You're telling me you were not in the marching band. You were on the football team.
no, I was not in the. I didn't even play an instrument till after I was
I'm not
till I was 16.
We would not have even been allowed to talk to each other.
Well, that I don't know. It depends. Were you cool in school?
That is, yeah, no.
Yeah, then we would have talked.
I mean,
we would have been very close. I belonged to this little coven, this little group in high school. I kind of was that person who got along with a lot of different cliques,
Yeah, I was
cliques
too.
as they were.
I think that's partly from the moving around and all that stuff. That's what I think it was.
It is, and I think the moving around has a bigger effect than people talk about. I think that you get better at dealing with different people, but you also get a little. I found I got a little weird about leaving. I mean, when I leave someplace, I would leave because we moved from Connecticut to Florida, I felt my best friend George Wilson was in Connecticut, in Nichols, Connecticut,
And what happened to George?
and I was
in
too
Nichols?
young. I think he became a really popular hairdresser. He's like a really good hair guy, but I haven't spoken to him. And
Well, the thing is, back then, if you weren't into letter writing, long distance calls were very expensive.
and I was
So
11,
Yeah.
12 years old, and
so you
but-
kind of like fall off the face of the earth when you move.
right. So that I got used to that.
Yeah,
And
me
so, and when I left Jacksonville, it was after high school, so I'd already separated from all my friends, and then I went up to lived in Atlanta. So basically, every 3 years of my life, I'm used to losing all of my friends. This is the longest I've ever been anywhere.
Ditto. Same here. Yeah. And so did you come to LA for acting or for music or wait a second. I just asked that question, but as I asked it, I was like, wait, I wanted to ask a question before that. So I'm going to ask the question I asked, but there was another question.
Send
I
in
was
all your
gonna
questions, and we'll just write them all down.
So did you move out here for the entertainment industry?
Yes. I did not move out here to act, though. I had acted in college, and I knew I loved it, but I didn't see that was my thing. I came out here I only came out here for 1 year. That was my plan. I went to the Musicians Institute, and I studied there. I studied guitar, and about 3/4 of the way through, I had been hit by a truck and nearly died, and I got some money. I got like $15,000 from almost dying from an oil truck hitting me on the freeway.
Wow.
And I went. So I took that $15,000 and I went to MI and I paid for my apartment and I paid. Back then, I found my receipt. Going to MI was $3,900. That was for the year. Now that wouldn't get you a parking spot. I mean, it's accredited now. It's this huge big thing. Anyway, so I went there for almost a year, and before I graduated, I dropped out and I went to work. I got a job. And I got a job with a company called Set Watch Motion Picture Security, and that's how I kind of got more interested because I worked for a great guy, John Warren, who was the location manager for Michael Landon, and he was doing Heaven. What is that?
Okay. Yeah. Highway to Heaven.
Highway to Heaven. I have the car card somewhere. Yeah, he was doing Highway to Heaven, and if you were his best guard on his team, you would end up on that show all the time. Because you did a lot of other shows. It was all about being on location. You'd be up all night guarding trucks full of, $3 million of camera equipment is sitting in a truck, and you're there with your, with a radio or something going, gee, I hope no one comes around.
But you were on the football team, so you could have just.
Well, more importantly, I had some self-defense training, so that was what gave me my cachet. To be a guard, but observe and report, that's your job. Your job is not to go tackle the criminals. That's for the professionals.
Oh, I can observe and I can report.
You can. You'd be a great security guard. So then I got to work on Highway to Heaven all the time, and that kind of got me interested in it. And I was talking to my wonderful father one day, and he says he never wanted me. He was shook when I started studying music in college. He was like, he couldn't believe it, because he went to college on the GI Bill. So he was a Marine, and he studied at Georgia Tech, and he wanted me to be an engineer because he grew up in the Depression. You know, he was very serious about it. And I was like, I want to study music. And he was like, oh. My neighbor found him in our front yard one day, wandering around the front yard, just saying to himself, he's a music major. Like, how have I gone wrong? What have I done to my son? But this man who felt that way called me, and he says, John, I really wish you'd finished that school, music school. And so I did. And then after that, I went to the vocal school. They just started the vocal department there. And when I finished I almost finished the vocal department, but my stomach blew up, and I graduated, but my stomach blew up. I had an ulcer, and I ended up in the hospital. And I get a call while I'm in the hospital bed.
This is a riveting tale. We get hit by a truck.
I know.
It's like, okay, so your stomach blew up.
The truest thing anyone ever said to me is, you should be dead. So I'm in the hospital, and I'm in the bed, and I get this call from the head of the department at the vocal school, and I'm thinking, well, this is so nice. You know, I've graduated, and he's calling me. You know, this is so nice. And Jerome Stucco's his name. He's a great voice teacher, and he's in Nashville now. But hey, John, Jerome Stucco's in Nashville. You might want to look him up. Anyway, Jerome's a great guy, and he says, John, do you think you can teach this stuff? And I'm like, right now? You know, I had staples in my stomach. Anyway, long story even longer. So I started teaching at MI, teaching voice and music theory, and then I met Julie.
And then you got the shirts.
And then I got the shirts. They don't know what you're talking about.
We were talking about wardrobe, y'all, out before the show, and Julie is a great wardrobist. Is that a word? Well, she really is. I mean, she has a background in.
She's a fashion designer.
Yeah.
I mean, she's founded $1 million companies and not been the one to walk away with the money. So she's way more talented than I am, and smarter, and more efficient, and more organized,
and prettier.
And well, thank God for that.
So
Can you
John,
imagine?
So John, that question I was going to ask before, I'm kind of wondering about the music piece. So I'm going back to Florida in my mind. Where do you think, if you were to think back to your youth, where was the seed planted? I mean, now you're a musician, you're a songwriter, you're a singer, played guitar, you went to MI, you taught at MI, all that stuff. But scrolling all the way back, where was that seed that started that all?
Oh man, and I do myself go back to Florida in my mind quite a bit. Well, that's interesting. I mean, you know, when I was a kid in Connecticut, in the basement, strumming on a tennis racket, trying to be the Monkees, you know, or the Beatles, right? And my brother got a drum set for Christmas, and you know, and nobody could play anything, but we wanted to be the Beatles, and that's probably the seed of it. But I remember it. I always think of this day. I was 16 years old. I was probably a junior in high school. And I heard the stage band playing at my high school, and I didn't know we had a stage band. It was a pep rally. I ignored pep rallies. And I heard this music, and I was like walking somewhere, and I just went, and I went to the music, and I just stood there. And I was so enthralled by it. When it was over, I went up and I started talking to them. Because they were guys that I went to school with. They were the seniors above me. And they were really nice to me, and I think because I could carry the, you know what a Fender Rhodes piano is?
Yeah.
It weighs a lot. It's really, the 88 is really big and really heavy. And I could carry it. I carried it by myself to the leader of the band's car. And then I carried his Fender Twin by myself. And I was small. I was like 5'6" and 145 pounds. But I'm doing this, and he goes, huh. So they had just the
There's a
percussion.
place for you in the band.
It's almost as good as having a van, just being willing to carry the heavy stuff. And remember that, kids. If you can carry stuff, you can be in the band. And their best saxophone player, Jose Benito, got thrown out of school for use of a controlled substance. And I think he might have been playing percussion too. Anyway, so they said, you here play percussion. And that was how I got started. And I always wanted to sing. I loved singing. So my mom said I sang before I talked.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did too.
And
I don't know.
I always wondered what I said. What did I sing? I think it was gas.
I love that. I was in that stage band when you were like that guy that was like peeking through the door and saying, can I carry the heaviest instrument possible?
I was actually
on
standing
that
at the
stage.
bottom of the stage outside. We were in Florida. It was all
Oh
outside.
yeah, yeah.
I wanted to ask you that. How did you end up here?
In Los Angeles or in New
You're a Florida girl. What happened? What went wrong?
Oh, well, Florida is not the right. Well, there's a lot I love about Florida, and most of it is the animal and the plant life, and my family that's still there.
That is the most. You're absolutely right.
But Florida was not, at least when I was growing up, not a great place to be a Jewess in a rural Florida town.
It's funny you say that,
Very
'cause
anti-Semitic place.
one of my best friends and several of my best friends all my life, my best friend who lives up in San Francisco now in Half Moon Bay, is a guy named Jimmy Benjamin, and he's like the most stand-up guy, like a brother to me. He was in that stage band. He was playing bass of all things, and I still like him. But he's Jewish, and there was a small Jewish community at the private high school that I went to.
Yeah.
And I get it.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there
it
are
was an
pockets,
Episcopal high
obviously.
school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are pockets of. I mean, obviously,
Jacksonville, I would think was okay
yeah.
because it
But
wasn't small town Florida.
Yeah, I was in small town Florida, and when I think about my early childhood of living in Florida, I mean, I was in love with Florida. When we moved up north to New York and New Jersey, I was
Oh, that
so
must have
sad.
been hard.
I was so sad to leave Florida. I just loved it. But I think what I really loved was the banana seat of the Schwinn bike from the girls next door, and also the popsicles, not the popsicles, the lollipops at the 7-Eleven that whistled, and the girl Shauna that I was friends with who had like a little red, what are those called? Like a little red wagon.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think those are, when you're little, it's like, do you love the state? Or these are the things that I really loved. And so when I missed Florida when we moved back up, or when we moved up north, those were the things that I was missing. When we moved back to Florida, we moved to a different town entirely, and it was just, it was sort of like the all the things at once. We moved back when I was in 12th grade, just about to start 12th grade, so that was a hard time for any. That's a hard time for any.
That is
kid
a
to
hard
move.
time to come to a new school. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
new school, new state, new everything, and pre cell phone, pre social, all of that stuff. And then that high school that I ended up in that year was Martin County High School, which is it's on the East Coast, and it's about 2,000. It's a large high school. It's about 2,000 kids.
Where
and
is Martin County?
Martin County is north of Palm Beach County.
Okay.
If you know where Jupiter and
Yeah, I know where Jupiter.
that it's on that. It's kind of in that.
That's Burt Reynolds' ranch place.
Yeah.
Jupiter, he had a
Yeah,
ranch
exactly.
in,
Yeah, he
in
sure
Jupiter.
did. So it's like Hutchinson Island, Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Martin, Stewart, Palm City. They're all like, all those kids went to this high school, and I think there were 12 Jews in this school of about 2,000, and because of that, and because I had also been steeping in the Northeast for a long time, it was just like I was just so very different, and I didn't mind being different. However, the kids around me, I think that they just didn't know what to do with that. It
Well,
was a
my friends
very,
who my friend Jimmy, he probably wouldn't go back to Florida just because the attitudes are so different. You know, we take for granted, especially in Los Angeles, and in San Francisco, but people are very open-minded here. I don't know if I would have ever become a songwriter
yeah, and
if I had
that's
stayed there.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there are a couple of things that contributed to me becoming a songwriter, but I don't think being from Florida was one of them. Although, like you, I miss it in
Yeah.
all of those ways.
I mean, the first meals I remember were Floridian meals. They were catfish and hush puppies and greens and, stuff like that. And so I feel like, meals and music, like those kinds of things kind of seep into you when you're young, and they become part of you.
I remember thinking that all the Southern stuff was foreign to me, which was weird because my dad's from South Carolina, his whole family, or as they say, his people are from South Carolina, and so going from Connecticut, where my mom was from Massachusetts, so we ate very meat and potatoes, and then we
Yeah.
moved down south, and somebody gave me fried okra, and I was like,
Yummy. I like it.
and then I didn't, and for a period of time I didn't like grits, and now if I go,
Oh,
that's the
I love
first thing
grits.
I get when I go
Yeah, me
home.
too.
It's like,
Me too.
and
I
we
get
did the same
grits.
thing. We moved back to a different city. My parents moved to Orlando, and that's nothing like Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And we lived on
Yeah.
a river in Jacksonville, and that had a huge impact on me.
Being on a river. Why
So,
is
but
that?
how did you? What's that?
Why is that? Living on a river had an impact on you.
Well, before cell phones and before I could drive a car, I could go out in a boat, and
Yeah.
there was a feeling of freedom that you can't imagine. We would camp out on the islands around us,
Yeah.
and it was just it was. I remember thinking, growing up in Connecticut, I had seen Flipper, the TV show
Yeah.
Flipper, with the kids who had almost a pet dolphin or a dolphin that
Right.
was their friend.
Uh-huh.
And I remember walking around Jacksonville thinking, or walking around in our neighborhood where a bunch of us lived on the river thinking, we really are we have it that good, that this is so, I mean, we never wanted for anything. My dad, especially when we got to Florida, he got a raise and a better job, and we got this house that was on the water, and we could basically, if we could afford gas, a couple of gallons of gas, we could spend the day on the water.
And
Which we
that's something I love about Florida is the whole East Coast, but it's different in Florida from up in New England, but it's a very watery place. Right?
It is a very watery place, which is kind of one of the things that makes it hard being here because it's so not watery.
Yeah.
You go to Florida and you take a shower and you think, oh, I should turn it off and soap, and you go, well, no, wait a minute, I just leave the
Yeah.
shower on. It's,
Yeah, it feels abundant. Yeah. So the songwriting world of Florida, I was not a songwriter when I lived in Florida, but
Me neither.
there was this one night, 12th grade, or maybe the summer after my first year of college. I went up to Boston for college, and I went back down to Florida that summer afterwards, and my mom by then had moved to a little area in Palm Beach County, and somehow I found this cafe where there was live music. I didn't yet play guitar. I was a musician already. I had been playing music for a long, long time by then, but I found this cafe. I can't remember the name of it, but there was this woman that got up on the stage, and she sang that song, that Joni Mitchell song, My Analyst Told Me I Was Right Out of My Head.
Twisted.
Twisted, yeah.
Tara used to sing. We used to play that. Tara used to sing that with us.
I
Tara
love
Sitzer.
this. That was the first time I ever heard that song. And I was just astounded. I was like, oh my gosh. And it got into me. There was
Because it
something
has
about
all
that.
the words in it.
It has every word in
Every
it.
word in the English language is this song. When Tara learned that song, I was so blown away. I was like, we're doing this song.
It is a very wordy song, totally. And it's told me that I was right out of my head.
Be
None
better
of
off
it.
dead. That song is based on a saxophone solo.
I believe that. I
That
didn't know
melody
that,
is
but I'm not surprised.
It's really cool. There's your song assignment for this week. Write a song based on a solo in another song.
Thank you, because I actually have a song due. I'm doing, as I told you before, I'm
Every
writing a
week.
song every week, and my Friday is my day for it to be done.
That's
I
when my
have a-
hat came off.
I
I
have a
had to take my hat off to you. When you said, every week you're writing a song.
every week, and I have to send it to a friend of mine. She's a songwriter too, and she's wonderful. And because I admire her as a songwriter, I cannot not do it, right? But I have been having a bear of a time with this week's song. So, sax solo. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see if that works.
So Tarl Sitzer saying, we'll do that song again soon. I know it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love seeing people's comments.
I know, it's really
so nice.
fun.
It is this. I like StreamYard. We were going to try to do the Folk Alliance event on StreamYard, but it was not enough people were hip enough to it. I think and nobody wanted to wear headphones, except
Yeah.
you. You were okay with it because you're cool. Because you're cool that way.
So, John, obviously, as you know, the theme of the show is Tomes and Tunes, and I know that
Tunes?
you have some.
I'm not going to play Twisted.
Yeah. Well, we'll start with the tomes, and I know that you have a whole stack there to help you get in the mood, right?
I do. It's a funny thing. And I think I don't know if you and I have talked about this. I think we did the other day when we were talking about doing the show in the first place, and when you invited me. And as a kid, I was a kid when they didn't talk about attention deficit disorder. They just said, "Hey, stupid." So I wasn't into reading, and I had, I was never gonna get like recommendations from my English teacher. They would say things to me like, "You write just like you talk, which is good. And if you learn the rules, it would be okay. But before you break the rules, Anyway, so I wasn't into reading at all. I avoided it. I was into being out on the river, and I was into doing stuff and playing sports. I loved basketball. But then my good friend Glenn Ferguson, God rest his soul, loved a certain book, and he said, "You should try this book." And I read this book.
Oh, which?
It's The Hobbit.
Okay, The Hobbit. Great.
And I think for a lot of people, and all of a sudden I liked what I was reading. And I don't know if you know, when you have ADHD, it's different, a little different for everybody. But for me, my eyes won't go straight across the page. They'll go, and my eyes jump around. And so it was hard, but then I got into it, and then I started. So this is the kind of stuff I like to read. I like to read sci-fi fantasy stuff. And when you were talking about this, and read a passage from a book, I'm like, oh, I don't know. So, but since then I love self-help books, and I love all sorts of different things. Did you want to hear
riddles in The Hobbit? That's the one with the riddles, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love. It's a lot like you and I talked about acting and before we got in here too, and I think that there's something about somebody sitting down and creating a completely different world. Yeah. And I think when you do a song, you try to do that. You have a shorter period of time than they do when they write a novel, but you try to create a world and as much as you can.
Yeah.
At least I know I want people to be either transported to a different place, like some of my good friends like Tracy Newman, who's a great songwriter. They're really good at drawing. When she does a song called Waffle Boy, and it's about a kid who's trying, it seems like it's his first day making waffles in the Waffle House. And he's just tanking. Everything's going wrong. And she draws this picture that you feel like, you're sitting there and you're wiping your fork clean before you start eating, in the Waffle House. And it's just this amazing thing. And to do that in, 64 bars or whatever your
Yeah.
song's going to be.
Yeah.
And I really admire it. And I think and I studied, when I did get into acting, I studied with a few different people, Cliff Osmond and the Tracy Roberts Actor Studio, but I ended up at the Sanford Meisner Center. And they were so serious, and you really had to get into creating your world and understanding the character and all that stuff. And I think that was really, really good for me. So what I want to like to read for you, this is how I read now. We were talking about, I love these books. This is a neat self-help book. This is called Super Attractor by Gabrielle Bernstein. And it's a little, but you'll probably like it. It's very good. And I have to have some, we were talking about, I read a lot of books at the same time. I have to have one book that I can go to lift my spirits. Like if I'm feeling down, I need to get myself I'll read something like that. And this is
That is an airplane going over. This is just proof
But
that
is-
we're in Los Angeles.
is it going over you or me though?
It's going over me, and it will be at you in just a few minutes.
Oh, that's true. That's probably true.
Because I'm closer to the Burbank airport.
So let me see if I can show you the cover of this book. This is it's gonna be really hard because it's gonna be really small. Let me see.
Put it right by your face, and maybe we'll be
Can
able
you can you see that at all? It's
Not
called.
so much.
Okay, so I can't do it because the screen's backwards. Anyway,
I know.
it's
I
called.
just see my own reflection actually when you do that.
This book was recommended to me. Well, that's not bad. By Nick Kirigo, who is a great producer and guitar player. He plays in my band. I'm not sure how I worked that out, but he plays in my band, and he's amazing. And he also writes great songs and is a wonderful human being. But he's very nurturing, which is kind of what you want in your bandmates. You know, Tara, who's listening today, she's one of the best people I've ever. She's also Jewish, by the way. And she is one of the most
My people.
your people and my people. But she's so nurturing. And for me, when I'm on stage with people, if I have doubts that someone on stage thinks I can do my job, I can't do my job. I had an experience the other day that made me remember that. It was like, oh, you got to be careful who's on your team. Anyway, so Nick recommended this book called Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's not a new book, but it's great. And I want, if we're reading, I want to read
Please
this.
do. Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to turn up my screen. So
I've actually been meaning to read that for years and years. So thank you
it's
for the reminder.
he talks about a lot of stuff, and that I think would be easily passed over. But the reason I brought up Sanford Meisner is because he talked about similar stuff. And there's another book I'm reading called Conscious Writing that talks about the same thing. When you're being creative, there's a lot of common threads that are not things you would pay attention to if you weren't being creative. Does that make sense?
For example.
Well, I met a casting director years ago when I was acting, and she said, this was a seminar kind of a situation, and she was talking to these actors, and she said, rather than acting, it's more important to me, now this is a person that's going to hire the people in the room, that you're an interesting person. Do things that make you an interesting person. Because if you're just an actor and that's all you have to draw from,
Right.
you're not going to be interesting to watch.
Right.
And it's and that's what I mean. Did that make sense?
Yeah,
Did
absolutely.
I connect the dots, or did I just go
Yeah,
off
I got
somewhere?
it. I got the picture.
What's he talking about?
I was just talking with, as you said that, I was trying to remember. Oh, I was a guest speaker for this. I have a songwriting student who is also a university professor, and she had asked me to be a guest speaker for her class last week, and that is something similar to what I was saying to the class. The question had sort of risen up about meandering paths and some people who wanted to be musicians but they had left it and they didn't know if they could come back, and all this stuff. And I feel like at the end of our lives, when we get to that last point, we're looking back at hopefully a complete person who has had experiences and adventures and followed breadcrumbs of curiosity that have maybe led down certain other paths that we wouldn't have expected. And I feel like this is aligned with what you just said about.
Yeah, I think those paths are really important.
Yeah, I think so too.
My mom always used to say, rather than try to be an expert at everything, try to know something about everything. I mean, rather than trying to be an expert at one thing, know something about everything. Because my mom could talk to anybody. She went to Radcliffe. I don't know if you know what school. It's like Harvard.
Yeah.
And she could talk to anyone.
It was the women's college it's now, yeah.
And she was wicked smart.
Yeah, wicked smart.
She was wicked smart. But she and I think I took that to heart by accident because I can't pay attention to one thing for very long.
Well, just to remind you, you were going to read a passage.
So I'm going to start, and it starts with a question. I'm not asking you a question. I'm just reading the question. Does this sound familiar? You think about your life all day long, your mind filled with issues. Should I move to New York, where Arielle Silver used to live? Should I stay in school? Should I become a teacher, or should I try to make it? If I got out of school, I could shed, meaning practice more. Maybe get better. By the way, the writer, Kenny Warner, is an amazing jazz pianist. If you're a teacher, perhaps you feel the need to take a sabbatical so you can practice and become the player your students think that you are. Music is not supposed to be a source of depression. Music is a gift. Music is ecstasy. Some people walk around wearing the badge proudly. My whole life is music. I'm not a human being. I'm a musician. It's not necessary for me to interact with the squares. Just care about playing and so on. But you have to discover a reason for living that is more important than playing. You need a sense of self that is stable, durable, not attached to your last solo. And periodically that makes you play better. And paradoxically that makes you play better. So I'm gonna read that again. You have to discover a reason for living that is more important than playing. You need a sense of self that is stable, durable, and not attached to your last solo. And paradoxically, that makes you play better. It removes the consequences and puts everything into perspective. The pressure is gone and you play better.
I love that.
It's something
Beautiful.
I'm happy that I read. Every time I read it, I'm happy I read it because I need to absorb it more in my life because I'm very judgy of me. You can ask my friends if I've ever come off stage and said willingly, "Yes, I did great."
Oh, John, I played a show. I have played many shows where this has happened, but I played a show, I think 2 years ago, and a friend came to the show. And after the show was over, she gave me a great big hug, and she said, "Oh my gosh, you sounded so awesome." And I decided in that moment that my friend is a big fat liar, and I can't trust her ever again. And I was driving home from the gig that night and thinking, man, she is such a liar. What a horrible person. And then finally, by the time I got home, it was like a 40-minute drive home. By the time I got home, I had realized what was happening in my head, that I had turned this woman who I had, so much honor and respect and love for, who was a friend, into someone who is completely untrustworthy.
And it was unfair.
And by so doing, because I then realized that I always do this, whenever someone would say, "Wow, that was a great song," or "You sounded great," or any kind of compliment afterwards, I always turned that person into a liar, assumed they were lying. And so then I, in that moment, on that particular day, realized that I was actually the bad guy because suddenly I was turning all of these lovely people in my life into monsters.
Yeah. I so get that.
But the mind is...
Not only that, but you'll find musicians, we tend to surround ourselves with other musicians so that we can say, well, that person knows, you know what I mean? And then they don't like you. Oh, he thinks I was good, so he's just telling me because he doesn't really want to be honest with me. He's not my friend.
Aren't the stories that we tell ourselves?
It is, but
So
I have to
fascinating.
say, and I'm happy to say this because there's a lot of my friends and community here
Yeah.
making fun of me for my
Yes,
attention
they
deficit
are.
disorder.
They told me not to say squirrel.
That's right. Don't flash anything shiny. I used to have a poker game like once a month, and my nickname was Shiny Shinerton because I would. John, you got any cards? Oh, yeah. But now I don't know what I started to say. See what
We were
happens?
talking about liars and the stories
Oh
in their
yeah.
heads.
Oh yeah. This community is so amazing because they. Well, Peggy Glenn, I don't know if you know Peggy Glenn. She was out here and she was dating my bass player. She actually, they thank me all the time because they met me because of my music. She was a fan of mine and she used to come see me play. And then Jimmy ended up in my band, so she met Jimmy, and now they're living in Prescott, Arizona, being happy as they could be, which is more than I could ask for. If music does nothing else,
It brings people together.
it brings people together. But she would force me. And if you knew Peggy, you'd know she could force you. She would force me to just say thank you. Because it's really rude, and I didn't realize how horrible I was being till my friends, Peter, all these folks that are watching have at some time said, you done good, shut up.
Yeah. And there is that that recognition that, oh, can you just take the high road and say thank you and deal with your, like, now is
Your
your work, so-
self-doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, now
Well,
you
there's
gotta deal
also a
with
thing
that.
where you can take it away from somebody. I mean, which is the most horrible thing if you think about it. I mean, if I come to you and I say, God, Arielle, for example, I heard you, one of your, I'm trying to think if I want to talk about when I heard you live a couple of song circles ago. Oh, yeah, I heard you live for the FAI thing, and I saw your video earlier today, and your voice is amazing. It just sounds so beautiful. Now, if you say to me, oh, man, I was so off that day, I could barely sing at all. Now I'm thinking, first of all, I've said, God, I'm really stupid. How did I not hear that? And I'm like, oh.
Right. Yeah, like I'm basically saying you don't have good ears, you don't have a good judge of
Yeah,
musicality.
what does your opinion mean?
Yeah, and then also I'm saying your generosity of spirit is not worth anything here.
Right. And it's
Right, and
it's
that's
so not how we feel.
right, exactly.
And this community really brought me around to what is important to music, about music, because
Yeah.
that is the thing that's important. If I play well, that's great for me. But if I don't play well and everybody still has a good time, I need to embrace that that's the thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because
like you
music
said before about, music brings people together. So
Yeah, because music,
Right.
music somehow became this thing, and this is one of a couple of pet peeves of mine about music that you and I grew up with. It became a thing where it was up here. It was the band on this big stage, and it was the records on the radio, and it was people who were so much more special than us, right? But that's not what music is for. I mean, yeah, we love to go hear great musicians, but music is for everybody.
yeah.
And I've met so many people, especially my contemporaries, who can tell you a story in their life. Julie's a great example. When Julie was in school, she auditioned for the chorus, and the teacher laughed at her and suggested she did something else. And if you start asking people that they will tell you these stories and I got to confront her teacher at our high school reunion. And she was like, did I say that? She was mortified because that's not what a teacher wants to do. But those people, like Karen Sullivan, who doesn't think of herself as a musician so much. She's a singer and an accomplished singer. She sings in a great choir. And Peter Krantz, who's a really good guitar player, would never tell you that. Because in their lives, someone along the line has said, you're not good enough. And the society of, oh, here comes another jet. The society of those people are better than these people in the coffee shop. You know what I mean? And you have to be as good as everybody you see on on X Factor or The Voice or whatever to be worthy. And
Well, I want to say I'm thinking about two things. First of all, I have to confess I was kicked out of middle school chorus because I couldn't sing. So me and Julie, we've got something in common.
case in point, right?
And
Right.
then the second.
Go ahead.
Oh, the second point is that but yet here I am. I'm singing, right? I'm a singer. I have 4 albums, and I think that you know when we're younger, or even when we're adults, those kinds of stories can knock us down. But what if we reframed those situations? This is what I've been thinking about a lot lately. What if we reframe them and positioned it as, okay, well, here is a someone saying no, and if I don't really want to do it, then that no is fine, because it just kind of pushes me on like a
It's
river
an excuse
flowing.
or a reason to move on.
Yeah, kind of like a river with a rock in it. It just kind of like redirects you in another direction. But but if you really want it, then you're gonna figure out how to somehow flow in the direction that you feel you need
Right.
to.
Well, that's kind of the problem with teachers being the ones to do that, because I think when you're developing and you're in school and a teacher, like I had a piano teacher when I was little. I wanted to play guitar, so my parents brought in this giant 88 key guitar for me to play, and I didn't like it at all. And I wouldn't practice, and the teacher told my parents he should get an instrument he can play with one hand. And it was a horrible experience for me. And what happens is you can believe that. And if the problem is when it's a teacher and you're young and impressionable, people believe that stuff. And
Yeah.
but they still have this desire. I can tell you, I meet people all the time who have and you're right. I feel like I didn't have a choice, because there were a couple other things I was doing. Acting wasn't working out bad, and stunt work wasn't working out bad, and other things I did. I could have been a real estate appraiser. I was a karate instructor. There are all these jobs I could have done, but the one constant that always resonated with me was music.
Yeah.
But I think you can squash that in a person.
Yeah,
I think
you
can,
can. You're right.
and especially
Yeah.
since people are more afraid of speaking in public than they are of jumping out of a plane. I mean, it's insane how scared people are and you couple that with somebody saying you're not good at it.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm not good at it, I'm not going to try it. And I go through it all the time. I'm always, am I doing this good enough?
Yeah.
But I just, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I hear too many stories. Oh yeah, I was doing this and the guy said I couldn't. Somebody told you couldn't sing. Are you kidding me?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure we could both trade a million stories like that, but here we are, and I'm right there with you. These stories are crazy. I'm going to share this one. This is a different type of, it's related to what we're talking about, I think, in a certain way. This is related to like a different take sort of on what we're talking about. What were you going to say?
Oh, I just had an anecdote about that I think is funny, but I can tell it now or later.
Tell it now.
When I was in that band I was in high school,
Yeah.
the band leader was a guy named Dave Adams. He was a mensch. He was everything. I mean, he could play any instrument. He was so nice to me and good friends to all of us. He was the band leader. He made it all happen. Without him, I would not be sitting here. I never would have probably done anything musically because I was afraid of it. And he said to me once, I want to be a rock star. That's all I wanted to do. And he said, well, maybe John could be a studio musician. Now, at 16 years old, I was crestfallen, and I was insulted, and I thought he meant he's not very good. Okay. Now, if sitting where you and I are sitting now, Was that a put down or was that a great compliment?
Right.
It was a huge compliment to say he could be a studio musician, but my ears weren't willing to hear it.
Well, also, he wasn't listening to he wasn't listening to something in you as well at the time.
Well,
There's something about that was not compatible.
There's truth in that. You're
Yeah.
not wrong. but it's also true that I could have gone, wow, if he thinks I can be a studio musician, I can probably be a rock star too.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear that because I
Yeah.
didn't have the confidence to hear that. Anyway,
Yeah.
please share your tone.
My heart breaks for the children that are inside of us, our past, the tiny John and the tiny Arielle and just like the children that everybody is walking around with that are still residing inside their hearts.
I used to talk to mine. I put him in the rider's seat, talk to him driving around.
Dear little John.
Yeah, he would never give me good directions, but he was always there.
So this is it's funny. It's related to what we're talking about, which has to do with narratives about what you can and can't do and all that stuff. But it's a different angle on it, and this is about race.
Now, is this what you were planning on reading?
It is, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting that we
Yeah.
came to that.
And this is by Kiese Lehman, a book called Heavy. It's a memoir, and I'm just going to read I'll read this one paragraph. I feel like this just like captures a lot about this book, but a lot about the exposure of white America to non-white America, to people of color and indigenous people, but also not just that, like any majority. So that could apply to like Christian America having exposure to Jewish or Muslim or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
So here he says. So he is, by the way, he's a black writer from Mississippi.
Yikes.
And
that's tough.
he says, I didn't hate white folk. I didn't fear white folk. I wasn't easily impressed or even annoyed by white folk because before I met actual white folk, I met every protagonist, antagonist, and writer of all the stories I ever read in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. At the time, I met Wonder Woman, the narrator of the Wonder Years, Ricky from Silver Spoons, Booger from Revenge of the Nerds, Spock from Star Trek, Mallory from Family Ties, damn near all the coaches and owners of my favorite teams. I met Captain America, Miss America, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. I met Luke Skywalker and his white father, even though his white father's voice, outfit, and mask were blacker than 37 midnights. I met poor white folk, rich white folk, and middle-class white folk. I met all the Jetsons, all the Flintstones, all the Beverly Hillbillies, the entire Full House, damn near everyone in Pee-wee's Playhouse, all American presidents, the dudes they said were Jesus and Adam, the women they said were the Virgin Mary and Eve, and all the characters on Grandmama's stories except for Angie and Jesse from All My Children. So even if we didn't know real white folk, we knew a lot of the characters white folk wanted to be, and we knew who we were to those characters. That meant we knew white folk. That meant white folk did not know us.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah, I really wanted to share that today. I had just recently
Thank
finished
you.
that book. So I feel like it's a really great reminder.
What book is that?
It's called Heavy by Kiese Lehman.
Wow. That brings up an interesting thing because I was kind of conflicted about this. I wasn't going to say anything about it only because I tend to be as non-controversial as I possibly can. But one of the books I'm reading is Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man.
Yeah.
Emmanuel H. Acho, and it's so there's the cover.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of getting the cover this time. Nice.
Yeah, I made it big this time. I got
Yeah.
smarter. That's all we can. That's all we can ever hope
That's
for.
what happens on this show. It makes people smarter.
Yeah, just getting here makes us smarter. But yeah, and I didn't have I'm kind of just into it. I'm like 30 pages in.
Yeah.
And and it's not. I read a lot when I want to go to sleep, and it's very thought provoking and challenging, and I think in a good way. And so I really want to read it when I'm awake.
Yeah.
I mean, the other stuff I read, like John Levitt, Unleashed, which is about a guy who's kind of magical, and his magical doggy that is the X-ray of Harley Jane, my dog. And I love stuff like that when I'm trying to go to sleep because it's like reading and it helps me practice reading faster. And but you know, when I go to things like I'll read Tony Robbins and things like that to develop myself, and I feel like reading uncomfortable. I can't even say uncomfortable. I must be very
Wow,
comfortable.
that's so interesting.
Uncomfortable conversations with a black man.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a responsibility. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get smarter, you know.
Yeah.
And he has an interesting background, you know. He's from, his family's from Nigeria, and he was immersed in a culture that didn't identify him, that he didn't identify with. So he knows what it's like to be on that side of it. And then he went to school at a predominantly black college, and then he, you know, found his people, as you said earlier about yourself. And it's fascinating to me to you know, I have a friend who's transgender, and I have this conversation I have never had with him because we're not that close. We're kind of friends like you're friends with other musicians that you meet. And but he's been a man and a woman. And as a vocal coach, I so just want to pick his brain because he knows because there's a lot of talk in the vocal community about teaching men to sing and teaching women to sing. And there are differences. And I want to know what it's like to be on both sides of that. And Emmanuel's been in some interesting places, so I feel like he has insight that not that many people have.
Well, maybe now that you've said that you want to have that conversation, maybe you'll reach out and ask to have that conversation.
Maybe we will. Peter could set that up. He's good friends. I'm talking about Sidney Bullens, who's part of the, what's
Sydney,
that band? I'm waiting. I'm seeing if Peter will chime in.
We played the Folk Alliance show together back to back.
Yeah, all three of the refugees were one after the other because Peter and Julie are magicians, and they made that happen.
It was pretty cool. It was a really fun night. Thank you guys.
It was a fun night. It's funny. I said this that night at the end of it. I got thanked a lot for that, and I answered the door. You know, Julie and Peter and the rest of the Far West people, Joel Tepp and Marlon and Becky Glenn and all the people, they did all this work. And I'm like, hi, y'all, come on in. And everybody's like, oh, thank you, John, so much. You've done such a... Just come on in.
Yeah. That's an
It was an honor. It was an honor.
Yeah,
I mean, I got to talk to some great musicians. It was a dream of mine to meet Craig Fuller. Craig Fuller wrote Amy and was with in Prairie League, and that band meant a lot to me. And when I was at a party that Julie was at, and when I sang Amy that night, she knew she was gonna be my girl, I think.
She knew you were the one.
Yeah, what's more valuable than that? The refugees.
Hey John, now this is a good segue into music.
Music.
Will you play a song for us?
I will. I actually had a couple of ideas, and I wanted to ask you about one of them. I talked to some friends of mine, and they said, "Oh, it's about books." And they said, "There's that song that you do that's based on a book. It's not my song, but it's one of my favorite songs." And I thought about doing that. And then I have a song that's kind of a story. That's my song, and they thought I should do that one.
I always vote for originals.
Yeah.
For you to play it, for the
Okay.
songwriter to play the songwriter's song.
Okay, well, this is, I guess, as much of a story song as I get, but it's not happy and people die. But whatever you want, Arielle, I'll kill the people for you.
Right here, folks, right here on Tomes and Tunes, episode 43.
Death by horseback. I tuned this last week. I don't know what the problem is.
Actually, while you're tuning yours, I'll just tune mine to make it kind of efficient.
Oh, it's in tune. I just did bad capo.
Bad capo
Bad
etiquette.
Etiquette, yeah. I have this conundrum. I don't like to tune when the capo's on.
John, you just have to look at the comment that I just put up on the screen. From
Yay,
John
death. John, do you have any songs where you kill people? John's music is fairly positive too. John and I, we've done quite a few shows together. He's one of a couple of people when I first got into this community, was really sort of a seminal influence. Him and Dave Morrison. Dave Morrison got me out to shows. Got my first house concert was because of Dave Morrison, and I never would have gone to Folk Alliance Far West if it wasn't for John M. He was going to do it, and I said, "Oh, do you think I should do it?" He said, "Yeah, you should do it." And then we partnered on everything. Like we shared a booth and we did all this stuff. And he's one of these guys, like he's a little bit like you. He shows up at the booth with a 60-inch television to show video and headphones, for everything. We got our videos ready to it was amazing. I mean,
That's
he was
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like you. You think you're not cool, but you're doing all the cool stuff.
Just so you know, I'm gonna put myself on mute in case any planes go overhead while you're singing.
Okay. This is called The Ballad of Micah McDowd. Can you hear me? There was blood on the saddle as he pulled her down. All hopes had passed as he yelled to the town. Bring me the doctor, the preacher, midwife. My woman and baby are losing their lives. The saints of the town came to answer his call. With one look, the doctor saw no hope at all. The midwife gave comfort, the doctor he spoke. Did you call the preacher last rites to invoke? Gripping her hand, he let out a laugh, as cold and as dark as the bleed of a calf. The tears from his face smeared the blood on their hands. I'll tell you, kind doctor, about my demand. Michael McDowd, take me out of these woods. I don't ask for lace or fancier goods. I don't wish our child to be born into shame. You take me to town and you give us your name. We met in the outback, no church folk were near. No dresses, no perfume or preacher to hear. Our vows of love, so tender and true. But that's not the story that brings me to you. Our first child was coming, about to be born. My woman was stiff-necked, we vows to be sworn. She wished to be married, proper and proud, and name our first child Micah McDowd. Michael McDowd, take me out of these woods. I don't ask for lace or fancier goods. I don't wish our child to be born into shame. You take me to town and you give us your name. The preacher came forward, speaking aloud, the words that would make her name Jenny MacDowd. Her eyes opened briefly, her last breath she blew. The words came out, mister, you know that I do. Michael MacDowd, take me out of these woods. I don't ask for lace or fancier goods. I don't wish our child to be born into shame. You take me to town and you give us your name. She wished to be married, proper and proud. Now she'll be buried with Mike MacDowd.
Thank you, John. I feel like that's very, it just feels like an old Irish ballad, right? Feels appropriate for St. Paddy's Day.
Yeah, I mentioned the Fiddler's Crossing song circle. I didn't.
Yeah.
I went there not thinking, oh, I should probably prepare an Irish song, so I played that instead. I said it was written by an Irish guy.
Just takes you right into the story, and the different characters as well.
Yeah.
When you sing the chorus.
You know, that's one of those songs that I feel like I didn't write kind of songs.
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just taking dictation from the divine.
Yeah, okay. I have to thank Nick Kiergo, too, because I brought it to Nick, and it was all verses. And it didn't have a chorus. And in his kind yet nudging way, he said, oh, I lost Arielle. She's gone. In his kind but nudging way, Nick said, that song could probably use.
I don't know what happened, but I'm back. Sorry about that.
I heard buttons and you were gone.
I just was trying to push my keyboard out of the way.
That song was so sad. I had to be
right.
alone for a minute.
Sorry about that, folks. Well,
anyway,
continue.
I told them, like I'll tell you, I said, Nick said, I brought it to him, it was all verses. And in his kind way, he said, I could probably use a chorus. So
did you write the chorus then, or had that been part of the song, but just you changed the music?
See how you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a verse.
Yeah.
And he was so right, and it was so a chorus, too. It
Yeah.
was
Just giving the ears something fresh to hear.
Yeah, and when I looked at it, when I looked at each verse, he just gave me that thought, okay, it needs a chorus, and he's so good. I thought, what are you going to do? If he gives you advice, take it and run.
Yeah.
And I read them all, and I went, well, there it is. It's right there. Sorry. So I missed it the first time. Very sorry. Oh, good. It's my turn to listen. It's funny. I just changed little bits of that guitar part. And, so it still feels a little new, even though it's one of my oldest songs. You never did tell me how you got to Los Angeles, by the way.
Oh, I was touring. I had been living in Boston. I had a bass player and a drummer. I was married to the drummer. Barely,
Lord.
Barely
Lord.
talking to the bass player. We were driving around the United States. We were on tour for about 6 months, and anybody who's been on the road will say how exhausting it is. And it was exhausting, but there were. I mean, this goes back to all the narratives we were talking about earlier. I just hadn't dealt with a lot of the narratives that were the naysayers in my head, and over the course of the journey, in some ways it was so awesomely positive, but in other ways, just being in this van every day, these voices were magnifying and also being on the road was really rough.
When you
And
say naysayers, you mean the voices in your head saying you can't do this, or?
you got it, yeah, those
Oh, wow.
naysayers. And we were on the road, and at some point we had gone from the East Coast down south through Texas, spent a good amount of time in Texas, had been on the East Coast on the West Coast, and had made our way back to upstate New York. And we were outside of the club that we were playing that particular night. We had a few hours between sound check and the show, and I remember just talking to my dad, and I don't remember what I said on the phone that day, but there was something that shifted for me. And by the time we got back down to Pennsylvania, through New England and then down the coast a little bit, I felt myself coming apart at the seams. And ended up, I forget exactly when it was, but ended up canceling a lot of shows, driving the bass player home to Virginia. I played a couple more shows after that, but then I turned to my then husband, the drummer, and I said, I'm done. What do you want to do? Wherever you want to go is fine with me. And he was like, well, I'm a drummer. I want to work as a musician, so let's go to a music town. I was like, great. And I said, where do you want to go? He said, New York. I said, fine. When I recover from whatever this is, at least we'll be, pretty close to Boston, where we had lived before, and I've played a lot of shows in the Northeast, so that'll be good. And then a week or two later, he said, actually, I'm thinking about Nashville. That would probably be better. We could eventually maybe, afford to buy a home. Cost of living is more affordable. I was like, great. I've lived in Nashville. I would, it's a great town. We've got a lot of friends there, a lot of songwriting friends there. That would be fantastic. And it was right around Thanksgiving. And we were going to move to Nashville, but first we went down to Florida to have Thanksgiving with my dad. And by the end of the Thanksgiving weekend, he had changed his mind again and decided that we should move to Los Angeles. And I was like, great, fine. So after Thanksgiving, we pointed the car west. And on December 1st, 2006, December 1st, we arrived in Los Angeles.
You're so easy to get along with. I mean, he changes his mind, and every time he changes his mind, you go, okay.
Well, at that point, I was like, I had
You just wanted out of what you were having to do, right?
Yeah. So
You know what fascinated me most about that story is when you said something that changed your perspective. Isn't that interesting that things bubble up and it comes out of you and you go, it happens when you're teaching, you say something, you go, oh, that's a good, interesting way of thinking about that.
I think that we have the answers inside us a lot of times.
Yes, but I refuse to cut myself open and get them. I've been cut open enough.
Says the songwriter.
Touche.
So this is a new song. Brand new, right out of the cooker. So this is the world debut.
You're so courageous. There's nothing you can do to make this be bad because you have my admiration just for doing it. Guys, she wrote this song last week.
And it's still, as you know, things are still gelling for a while, but
how can you do it? I can't, because I'll get to a part, if I've just written a song and I get to a part that I'm thinking I might change, forget it. The squirrels are in charge after that. Which is funny, when in the middle of Micah McDowd, I have my window cracked just enough so I get some sunlight in here. And I look out, and there's a palm tree right there with a squirrel staring in at me. What do you... Who sent you?
I have squirrels running up and down the tree right outside my window this whole time, so... You might hear them on my roof occasionally.
Me too, mine too.
So this one's called Some Kind of Loves Like That. Some Kind of Loves Like That. Or maybe it's called Some Kind of Love. Blackberries grew in the thicket north of our yard. In summer we'd pick 'em and come home with stickers and thorns in our arms. Some hours later, when supper was plated and served, we barely remember the pain for the pleasure that went into making dessert. And some kind of love's like that. Sweetness buried in a thorny patch. A bramble vine, heat and time form a heart from the scraps. Like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love's like that. Someone once showed me the best way to work with the dough. Just a few presses, crimp down the edges, and squeak the old oven door closed. Finding a balance to strike between effort and ease requires some practice, delicate lattice. You learn it degree by degree. Some kind of love's like that. Sweetness buried in a thorny patch. A bramble vine, heat and time form a heart from the scraps. Like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love's like that. Some kind of love's like that. Sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramble vine, heat and time form a heart from the scraps. Like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love's like that.
Oh my God. You wrote that last week? That's like my favorite thing I've ever heard you sing. That's amazing.
Wow, thank you, John.
Holy crap.
And I think I must have been thinking about Pi Day, March 14th, 3.14. I don't know. I wasn't conscious about it, but then I wrote the song, and then Pi Day happened. I was like, oh, huh.
Peter Grant says, I do love pie.
I think we need more pie songs in this world.
Yeah, it's hard to get too much pie.
It really is hard to get too much pie, spoken from two Southerners.
Yeah. Southerners love their pie.
We sure do. Well, John, this has been really, really fun. I love swapping stories and songs with you. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy I got to know you a little better today. I really did enjoy the sound check. It was nice to just sit and chat.
It was really fun.
I want to thank, Tom Hubbard and John and Becky and Karen and everybody for showing up today. It's and Charmin Natoli, who I don't know.
Yeah, Charmin has been a guest on this show. She is a phenomenal songwriter. Charmin, I hope you don't mind me sharing the fact that our conversation when she was a guest was about how Frank Sinatra cut one of her songs.
Holy cow.
So that's a ding, 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 right?
So she spelled her name wrong. It's really shaman. She's a songwriting shaman.
A songwriting shaman. She is very talented. So thank you all for being here. So fun to see you in the chat box, and John, it has been just so much fun. I can't wait till we play more shows together. And I'm looking forward to playing shows with you. But I'm actually hoping that maybe we can carpool to the shows so that I can just hear more stories.
Back at you. I'll get to listen more. I'll drive if I get to listen more. How's that?
Oh, I'll let you drive. That's for sure. Anytime. All right. Well, I'll say goodbye to you in the green room, and I'll say goodbye to everybody else here. Thank you so much for being here. This was the 43rd episode of Tomes and Tunes. Started last year when, of course, everything shut down, and I just really, for myself, wanted to connect with other songwriters and, swap songs and talk about the creative process. And it's turned into a really fun thing. So thank you for being here. Next week, we have Joel Eccles. Some of you might know him from Hotel Cafe. He's been a songwriter here in Los Angeles for a long time, and just someone that I'm really looking forward to talking with. So I hope you will tune in next week. Thank you, Far West, for helping get the word out about this show. And you can catch all of the past episodes on my YouTube channel and also at that linktree/ArielleSilver on my website, all the archives. So until we meet again, take good care, stay safe, and see you next week.